This video follows on from what we've been looking at so far, so just a very quick recap. We've looked at the two individual forces that go into making up a market. And we call those forces demand and supply. And remember that demand is the force which comes from the consumers, and supply, in most cases, comes from the firms. And when we looked at these, we said that we could represent these on a diagram. So we can draw a very quick sketch diagram here to show how the price affects the amount that consumers want to buy. And we said that when the price is high, the amount that consumers want to buy is very low. When the price is low, the amount that they want to buy is increasing. So that means that demand is going to be a downward sloping curve like that. At the same time, in a market, we have supply, and for supply, for the firms, the incentives are different. For firms, the incentives work the other way around. When the price is very low, firms can't make any profit, so they're going to produce very little. As the price rises, they can be more profitable, so they're going to choose to produce more, which means that the supply curve will be an upward sloping line like this. Now, what is a market? A market is where these two forces come together and interact. So a market is where buyers and sellers, or consumers and firms, come together to exchange their goods. So what that means is we need to stop looking at these two things as being isolated and independent of one another, and we need to start bringing them together and see how they work together in a market situation. So let's do that. So we're going to start with the numerical example, and then we're going to move into the kind of the abstract way that we normally use this. So we're going to look at a numerical example. I'm going to continue with my coffee example that I've used from the first couple of videos. Now, though, we're going to be considering rather than the level of demand just from my classroom, we're going to be considering the level of demand from the little village that my school is in. So what I've got in the little table on the right-hand side over here is the various different prices of a cup of coffee. So 10p, 50p, £1, £1.50, £2. Here I've got the level of demand which will occur at each of those prices, and the amount of supply that will occur at each of those prices. So when the price is 10p, as you would expect, there's going to be a very high level of demand. 900 cups of coffee will be bought, or people will be willing to buy 900 cups of coffee at 10p, but no firms are willing to supply cups of coffee at that price. They simply can't make any money. As the price rises, so say to £1, fewer people are going to want to buy cups of coffee at £1. It's become more expensive for them now, so maybe they'll only have one cup rather than two, or maybe they'll choose not to have a cup of coffee at all. But now that the price has increased to £1, firms are going to be more willing to supply the goods, the cups of coffee, so the coffee shops in the village would be willing to supply 200 cups of coffee at a price of £1. So let's transfer these over onto the diagram. I've already set up the labels just to make this a little bit quicker. So let's think about a price of 10p. So at a price of 10p, there is going to be zero supply, so I'm going to make supply blue here. So we have zero supply, and demand, which I'll make pinky red, is going to be 900. So that's what's going on at 10p. At 50p, we are going to have supply of 100, which will look about like this. And we are going to have demand of 700, which will be about there. When the price rises up to £1, we are going to have demand of 200, which is going to put us about here. And we are going to have a supply of 500, which will be about there by the looks of it. When we get to £1.50, then supply will be 300. Demand will also be 300. And when the price is at its highest, when the price is £2, there will only be 100 people wanting to buy the good, so our demand will be back here, and the supply of the good will be 400 cups of coffee, like that. So you can see there that I've just plotted on these various points, created my demand and supply schedules, and so if I join these points up, so what I can do is I can join these points up, should be in a straight line, apologies they're not quite, to create my supply curve, which looks like that, and create my demand curve, which looks like this. So this is simply transferring those demand and supply points, those demand and supply values, onto my diagram like this. So what should become quite clear is that, that there's a point here where the two lines are going to cross one another, and in this case it occurs here. So at this point, demand and supply are both the same. And we need to think a little bit more about what's actually going on here. So get a different coloured pen here. This is occurring at £1.50. Okay, and at £1.50, demand and supply are both equal. In fact, you can see it on the table over here that at £1.50, demand and supply equal. What does that actually mean? Well, it means that when the price of a cup of coffee in the village here is £1.50, it means that the consumers want to buy 300 cups of coffee, and the coffee shops in the village are willing to supply 300 cups of coffee. So what this means is that the demand is equal to supply. And what happens here is we say that the market is in equilibrium, which is where demand is equal to supply and the market clears. What we mean by the market clearing is we mean that everything that is produced is being bought. So 300 cups of coffee are being produced and all of them are being bought. There are none left over and there are no shortages. So the equilibrium is a really important point in economics. It's where demand and supply are equal and it's where the market clears. On a diagram, it's simply where the two lines cross. So if that's what's going on where the two lines are equal, we need to think about what's going on if the price is somewhere other than this. So if £1.50 is our equilibrium price, what happens, say, if our price is too high? Let's say our price is £2. We'll take a different colour pen here. If my price is £2, what's actually going on? Well, if my price is £2, it means that demand and supply are going to be different. And we can see that here, and indeed you can see it on the table over here. When the price is £2, there'll be lots of cups of coffee being produced, 400 cups of coffee being produced, as we can see over here, but only 100 of them will actually be bought. What that means is we have up here a surplus. If the price is £2, then the market is not going to be in equilibrium. So we say that it is in disequilibrium. Okay, demand is not equal to supply, and the market has not cleared because there are unsold cups of coffee. Specifically, there are 300 unsold cups of coffee. So there is a surplus or an excess of cups of coffee. Final example then, just to complete the picture here, let's think about what we have if we have a low price. So let's say that we'd set a price of 50p. Let's think about what's going on here. If we set a price of 50p, then the firms are not going to be willing to produce very much of the coffee. They can't be very profitable, so they will produce only 100 cups of coffee. However, because the price is so low, so we've got to come down to 100 here. Because the price is so low, there will be many consumers wanting to buy cups of coffee at that price. Specifically, there will be 700 consumers willing to buy cups of coffee at this price. So what we will have here is we will have a situation where the demand for cups of coffee at 50p is much greater than the supply of cups of coffee at 50p. So rather than having a surplus, here we will have, between these 2 points here, we will have a shortage. Okay, and a shortage again is an example of disequilibrium. So three key things here. Let's just simplify this diagram. I know it's got a little bit complicated, so let's take away the numbers and make it a little bit simpler for ourselves on the next slide. So hopefully this clarifies things a little bit more, makes things a little bit more obvious. So we'll start with the green. Green is price P. And when the price is P, the market is in equilibrium. Demand and supply are equal, and the market clears. So at price P, the market is in equilibrium, demand is equal to supply, and the market clears. At price P1, which is above the equilibrium, the market is in disequilibrium because supply and demand are not the same. In this case, supply is more than demand, supply is greater than demand, and as a result of that we have a surplus. We have more being produced than is consumed. So there are going to be goods left over when the price is too high. When the price is low, P2, again we are in disequilibrium because demand is not equal to supply. In this case though, because the price is low, this time it's demand that's very high. Consumers want to buy a lot at the low price, but supply is much lower, so demand is greater than supply and there will be a shortage. So there will not be enough goods being produced in order to satisfy the consumer's needs at that level of price. So that's the kind of the summary diagram really, just to clarify the different positions. The most important one in economics, one that you will come back to again and again and again, is considering when the market is in equilibrium. So when the market is in equilibrium, which is the state that it will generally trend towards, demand is equal to supply and the market will clear.